Thank you for joining us again. Another edition of our virtual studio at NAB. And today we're rich in talent and knowledge. We have three of our good friends at Red. We're going to give us a pretty comprehensive presentation on a lot of what we call the three R's, which are really the core principles of Red. So without any further ado, I'm just going to pass the mic to my friend James. James, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Michelle, and thanks so much for having us. What we're going to talk about today is the power of red, and that is the three R's: resolution, red code, and reliability. We're going to go ahead and kick it off with Clay Reed, our in-house photo content creator, and we're going to start right with reliability. Go ahead, Clay.
I'm going to start the way all my favorite teachers in school started, with a video. So here we go. We're going to watch a video by Gabriel Mann about reliability in his work with our cameras.
Filming wildfires is like this nightmare cocktail of everything you don't want anywhere near a camera. It's like a war zone. You got helicopters, flare guns, bombs, jets, fire tornadoes, chainsaws, cable news douchebags with untied boots. I've been baptized so many times by the ships that nothing electronic anywhere near me should work ever again. But the Reds just keep cranking. And I don't use a camera cover, because I'm an idiot. But it's a rad paint job. Every single camera I've used on the fire line has gone down from the heat, except the Reds. So when some bro asks me, like, hey, would you trust a Red for a big client job? Dude, you're in an air-conditioned studio for 8 hours. I've taken my Reds to the gates of hell. Relax. Things are tanks.
So that was pretty insane, right? I mean, that's probably the best testimonial to reliability that I can think of, because the reality is, in a situation like that, how on earth would you ever get another piece of gear out there? Like, if you break a piece of equipment, the shoot's done. I mean, are you going to hike out, or maybe have a helicopter bring one to you after they douse you with water and flame retardant chemicals? Like, it's just unbelievable that the cameras are built to withstand that type of pressure and still come out with the shot. And so that's kind of a great way to set the stage. And what I sort of want to talk about is the way modularity in our DSMC2 system, as well as the differences in our Ranger system, lead into reliability. So one thing about a modular system is, if you look at Gabriel's gear, it's getting hammered. It's getting wet. It's got IO ports that are probably having stuff go into them, and it's great that it survives the shoot, but at some point that could cause a problem. And so what's beautiful about modularity is that if something did get in an IO port, you can pull off that back module, replace it, repair it, whatever you need to do to get through the shoot. It means your camera is still functional. And so that's something that's really, really beneficial when you talk to modularity. However, a lot of people working in content creation are doing it on set. They're making narratives and short films and commercials, and the reliability on set kind of talks to a different crowd, right? They're not running into fires like Gabriel is. They're wanting to plug in a Preston and not have that initial power spike turn off their camera. And so what we have in the Ranger system is a 24-volt system, a unibody design. That means that you're able to have more standardized mounting points and rely that the accessories that you have are going to carry through to the next production and the production after that, and you'll always be able to use this camera. And so a great thing that I hear people talk about is how much quieter the Ranger system is, and that's due to the unibody design. So there's one single large fan at the top that moves air more efficiently through the system, and that allows for, well, a quieter fan, right? So just like on servers, when we hear really high RPMs and smaller fans that move air really aggressively, that's a much higher noise return than a single fan that's really efficient and is cooling the whole system. So the flip side of the Ranger is its size. So if you want to rely upon the fact that you're consistently able to use the same camera in any different solution, that leads us back a little bit towards our DSMC2 line. So if you're looking to go into a water housing and reliably stay dry, if you're looking to go into a gimbal and reliably stay smooth, a lot of these things are made more difficult by a larger camera body. And Red also offers different DSMC tool modules that'll align the I/O to fit your specific need. And I think the last thing I really wanted to touch on with reliability is that Red itself is reliable. I mean, that's one of my favorite parts. I work at the company. I'm not in support. I treat this job like it's my family, like they're my friends. And so when someone who owns a camera that I know hits me up, I'm right away with answers if I have them and calling people in support if I don't. And the whole company works like that. We're like one big family, and our support guys are amazing. They're great, and they'll respond to you and any of your problems anytime you need them to. And so I just wanted to give a shout out to those guys for keeping us, true to our word and truly reliable. And also, because we're all inside and struggling with being far away from each other, I wanted to remind us that anytime you edit footage that's R3D, anytime you touch a camera, you're part of that family. You're in this together with us.
Thank you so much, Clay. I know personally that I have also reached out to Clay and had many of those times, and Clay is definitely the reliable source, and we all are one big reliable family here, and we always like to try and empower that and live by that message going forward. The second R that we're going to go ahead and cover today is Redcode. And if you don't know about Redcode, Redcode is Red's proprietary form of onboard raw recording. And I don't want to steal too much of Johnny's thunder because he's going to do a great one on it. But let's go ahead and learn a little bit more about Redcode Raw with Jonathan Petz.
Awesome. Thanks, James. So as he said, I'm going to talk to you about Redcode and some of the improvements we've been making over the past year. For those of you not familiar with Redcode, as James said, it is our patented wavelet compression system that was originally developed back in 2007 for the Red One that enabled us to shoot high quality 4K RAW in really small data sizes. That same technology is now enabling us to shoot 8K RAW files in a similar kind of data size to that of a 4K ProRes. Just for some comparisons, an 8:1, 6:1, an 8K 6:1 compressed image is going to run you about 216 megabytes a second and get you about 75 minutes on a 1 terabyte card. For comparison, a ProRes 4K 444XQ is going to be about 225 megabytes a second and get you about 71 minutes on a 1 terabyte card. Now, those numbers are pretty close, but actually 8K is 4 times the resolution of 4K. We're working with a 16-bit container in a RAW format. So you've got all of that flexibility to come into post-production and really pull out the image that we want and really craft a unique look. We've got things like we can change our ISO, our white balance, how our highlights are being handled, the contrast in the image. We've got valuable metadata from lens protocols such as Cook Eye and Zeiss XD. So those VFX guys are going to feel right at home and be able to work with this file really, really easily. But I do frequently get asked, hey, what's the best compression ratio should I be using? And people often get scared by the word compression. If you've ever gone to the cinema, you've seen a DCP, which is built on wavelet compression as well. But just for a bit of reference, here's a couple of good guidelines. So at 8K, you can shoot from anywhere from 5 to 22 to 1 compression. Netflix allow anything from 6 to 8 to 1. But it's really about managing your requirements for data and image fidelity. So say you're doing a documentary interview, maybe you're doing a music concert, or you really need a long duration of recording. It's perfectly fine to increase that compression to, a 10 to 1, a 12 to 1 kind of compression. But if you really need maximum image quality, maybe you're doing a big VFX project, 5 to 1 is where you're going to want to stick. But as I said earlier, people do get quite scared about compression. But this is very different to that blocky compression you may be used to with a JPEG or an MPEG or other codecs. Wavelets work in a very different way when you start to increase the compression. We start to see in very high frequency areas a slight softening. So let's say we're shooting a load of trees. On the very edge of the trees, we might see some slight softening. On some text, again, some slight softening. And maybe in very dark areas, a slight increase in kind of grain texture over there. But it really is visually lossless. So you can only really spot those things when you really punch in a few 100%. And productions all over the world are utilizing Red technologies, Red products, and Redcode to deliver fantastic images to their productions. I just want to call out some of them because some of them are actually amazing. So Netflix's Extraction, Irishman, The Witcher, Stranger Things, Apple TV's The Morning Show, cinematic releases, including, but not limited to, Bloodshot, Guns Akimbo, A Hidden Life, and A Portrait of a Lady on Fire. Now, that list would be absolutely massive if I called absolutely everyone. So I just got a few little standout ones there just to bring up to you. But some of the challenges of working with a compressed RAW format is decompressing it. Just like when somebody sends you a zip file over the internet, you've got to double click, and your CPU is the one that's dealing with that decompression. So what have we done? We've partnered up with our friends at AMD and NVIDIA to basically remove those bottlenecks from the CPU in decompressing those 8K files. To start off, AMD, we've worked with them to basically take that decompression away from the CPU and move it onto the GPU. And on their latest generation of RTX cards, there's thousands upon thousands of CUDA cores that absolutely churn through 8K raw footage. I've been able to play 8K in real time on a laptop, which is absolutely unheard of even a couple of years ago. AMD, on the other hand, they have just recently released their Threadripper 64 core, which from what a couple of my friends have already been saying is insane for a CPU, being able to play back 8K raw just on the CPU. In terms of with CUDA, Blackmagic and Assimilate Scratch have implemented these into their software applications, so you can experience those enhancements for yourself. And we're really looking forward to seeing what people do with AMD and NVIDIA products in their machines. Jumping over the fence onto the macOS side of things, at the end of last year, we released Metal into our Red SDK. So software developers can now start using that same concept of taking the decompression away from the CPU and onto the GPU. And just last month, Blackmagic released their implementation of Metal into their software, so macOS users can start getting some of those enhancements as well. We're always constantly looking to improve the ways that you work with Redcode raw files, and we're really looking forward to seeing what more of our technology partners do with it. So check out some of those enhancements for yourself and see how they integrate into your workflow.
Thank you so much, Johnny. That was a great initial introduction into the first two R's, and I'm going to go ahead and wrap it on up with the last R, which is resolution. Now, I do think that it's first to kind of go ahead and understand the evolution of our RED technology, and we have a great slide that shows all the way back to that very first RED one in 2007, and you can see that larger body there that shot 4.5K back in 2007. That was still using the same RED code that we're using today in 2020, and that's quite exceptional. You can also see how we've evolved through our various bodies from our RED 1 to our first DSMC or digital still motion camera, now to our current version 2 or DSMC 2. And if you go on to the next slide where you'll see the comparison of the DSMC 2 cameras, you might look at it and think that we have 4 cameras there, but that's really not 4 cameras. That's one unified body. And I like this from a filmmaker standpoint because now I can choose a body and then choose a sensor or a film stock to go along with that. So notice we have our one unified body there, and we have 4 individual sensors that go into that body. Now, if you didn't want to go with the modular body, there is our Ranger system, which is the all-in-one full feature system. It does allow for the 3 out of those 4 sensors, and what that allows you to essentially do is have maybe one level of your production being on the all-in-one body, and maybe the field crew of another part of the production out in the field with a much smaller, more modular body. All the while still having that same sensor, that same look with the same lenses that you need to have that consistent look for your production. Now, anytime we talk about resolution, I know the first thing that comes up, the 8K, 6K, 5K, 4K, and really when we say that, all we're really talking about is the longest edge or the widest line of resolution. So for 8K, that would be 8192. For 6K, that would be 6144. And 4K, that's 4096. Now, if you refer to the resolution chart, you will see that we have those same resolutions, 8K, 6K, 5K, 4K, all the way on down. And then right below that, let's talk about the still aspect of that, or the megapixels, which would be the length times the width. Now notice 8K is 35.4 megapixels, 6K is right around 19, 4K is right around 8. And the thing that you may notice there is if you take that 4K or 8 megapixel and then add 2K or 2 megapixels, that does not equal 6K, right? That's what we're talking about when we're talking about this, using this resolution and having essentially double, triple, quadruple the resolution, when it allows you to expand your canvas and allow you to have better clarity, better detail, more round edges, because at the end of the day, we're doing this with pixels, and the more pixels you have will give you the best clarity and the best overall performance. Now, when we talk about 8K, I already mentioned it, that's 35 megapixel stills and up to 60 of them a second. We also offer it in a full frame or our 8K Monstro VV, as well as our Super 35 edition with our helium. Now that's great because maybe you have a whole set of lenses that is only Super 35, so the helium would be a great solution for you. And that's really what we've seen for a lot of our streaming shows that want the ultra high resolution, but maybe they like the look of a Summicron, which is a Super 35 lens, so they're perfectly happy staying with the helium sensor. On the flip side of that, the Monstro is the one sensor out of all of our 4 sensors that does full frame and Super 35 by essentially shooting 8K full frame or going down in resolution to 6K where you could hit that Super 35 same mark as well. Now, the nice thing about this is we do have 3 other sensors. They all are approximately the same size, and you can really see that when you look at our sensor chart. You can see that the Monstro is the 35.4 megapixel sensor, and then the helium is also 35.4. So really, they're both 8K. It's just the difference in the photo sites, and that allows you to essentially have one being full frame and the other being Super 35. This can also let you have subtle characteristics in your grain or maybe your shadow detail, something that one filmmaker might like one over the other. At the end of the day, these are all just like film stocks. You can completely choose your sensor, and that's why a lot of our more recent customers are gravitating towards our newest sensor, which is our Gemini sensor. Now, the Gemini sensor was the first of our sensors to offer dual sensitivity, and that really allows you to essentially do a hard analog switch to your sensor and process it in a different mode where we're able to feed that sensor more juice, more power, and essentially allow us to have 2 additional stops of shadow protection in low light mode or in highlight protection if we are in the standard mode. Very flexible system there, and this is why you're seeing it being used on a lot of maybe non-scripted shows or television shows where you don't necessarily have all of the control you want, or maybe you're just not trying to disrupt it with bringing in way too many lights. So definite great flexibility with the Gemini sensor. And you can also see that we have our Dragon sensor backed by popular demand. This was our flagship sensor of a couple years back that we now have, much like a photography company would reintroduce a popular film stock. We reintroduced this sensor last year, originally as a 5K sensor in our DSMC2 unified body, but later enabled that up to be the full potential of that sensor, which is 6K. The nice thing about that Dragon sensor is it's a tried and true sensor. It's won a number of awards. It's been used on a number of great shows. And the nice thing is it all uses the same IPP2 and Redcode and benefits that we do get with our other Red cameras. Now, I don't want to just talk about 8K. Let's not forget that 6K, even though it is 44% smaller than 8K, it's still 10 times HD resolution and more than enough resolution to essentially stabilize, reframe, post-zoom, or even just super sample to have the cleanest possible image, and that's all beneficial with all of our sensors. Essentially being able to shoot greater than 4K resolution and have all of that benefits for stabilization, reframing, lowering your noise floor, and essentially maybe even future-proofing your production. Now, I think there's a great testament for this, and you heard Johnny mention it earlier that we were shooting 8K, and he was mentioning at 10 to 1s right around 130 megabytes per second. Well, if you look over my shoulder right here, I actually have my Panther Chameleon Aussie sitting here behind me, and if I do a quick punch-in, what you're actually going to see is a 1-to-1 zoom, and we're going to go all the way into one of those megapixels, and you're seeing some pretty incredible detail. I'll have to point out that at 130 megabytes per second, we're doing 4 times your 4K resolution, and notice I can see detail on this little critter that I definitely wouldn't have seen if we didn't have all of that extra resolution. Now, I'm able to do that because I'm using resolution in combination with Redcode and also the reliability of this system here to make sure that it's going on and recording. I can even hit record right now and start a pre-record, so in case any action happens behind me, I won't miss it even though we're doing this stream with us live. Now, I want to go ahead and end up the 3 R's in this Power Red presentation and thank everyone with a Mark Toya reel. And he's one of our favorite Red shooters, and he's got a great reel called Why Red. It's a couple years old, but you know what? Here in 2020, it still makes perfect sense. And I'm going to go ahead and play that for you right now.
We are also very fortunate this day and age, as there is so much great camera choices out there in the marketplace. So why did I choose Red? Look, at the end of the day I need a workhorse, something that won't let me down, and it has to tick as many of my boxes as possible. what I use day to day has to fall into three major categories. Image quality being number one. It has to be easy to use, on set and all the way through the post-production process. Third is size and weight. I've never been emotionally connected to brand names or logos. I've just jumped between cameras my whole working career. Always in search of something that can deliver a better image in the least time possible. So my reason for using RED cameras is purely logical. Speed and performance are the two things that will give me a creative edge. It's as simple as that. For me, image quality is everything. Some say resolution is not important, but for me it is. I shot a lot of 10 by 8 inch film in my photography days, which was probably and still is the ultimate in resolution. Having all that resolution gave me so many options to reframe and resize with no worries about grain, and yes, the lens had to perform as well, or the resolution was wasted. 8K resolution allows me to push in 100, 200% and reframe. It's like having 2 or 3 lenses on the same camera during the same take. The more resolution and deep data there is in the raw container, the more dynamic range I have, meaning the more colour grading choices I have, meaning the less noise there is. It's simple schoolboy math. You can't argue the science, even though people love to try. I realised many years ago back in my film days that lenses dictate the overall look, density, sharpness, contrast, mixed in with distortion and flares and colour aberrations. You can push and pull all you want in the colouring suite, but you're never going to change a lens's optical look or character. So for me, that's where the look comes from. So if you're after a cinematic look, you have to use a lens that gives you that look. The red sensor will capture all the information and more so, but only you ultimately decide on that final look. This is why I collect so many lenses, and I'm always on the lookout for more. They're all artist brushes at the end of the day. There is no such thing as a bad lens. The camera itself is as easy to use as an iPhone. Actually, it's easier. Actually, you can operate the whole bloody camera on an iPhone. But really, it's as easy as this. Turn the camera on. Frame rate adjust. Color temperature adjust. Focus. Press record. It's seriously that simple. There's something in there for everyone's needs. Anyone that says RED cameras are difficult to use obviously haven't used one. It's not rocket science. Overall, RED has made my shooting life so much easier. I'm actually getting quite lazy with exposure and colour settings these days, only because I don't live in a colour-baked world anymore. In my 35mm days, I had to be like spot on with everything, but now I'm in a raw world, meaning I can change all that information later. If I'm in a rush trying to capture a performance or a shot that I could lose any second, or I've completely disregarded the colour temperature and I'm underexposed a couple of stops, all sorts of things can go down. But I don't really worry at all. There is so much latitude in the raw file that I can easily retrieve my desired look. Framing and capturing the perfect shot is more important to me. I do a lot of visual effects work. 3D tracking can be an absolute bastard on noisy shots, and doing chroma key work can be an absolute pain in the ass also, but the 8K resolution makes it so much easier. And honestly, if I couldn't do any of this on a laptop, the deal would be over. But I can. I change my rigs nearly every shoot. One day I'm shooting a feature film, the next one I'm shooting a TV ad, then I may send the camera underwater, then I'm putting it on a tracking arm or in a helicopter or hanging off a drone, and then the next day I'm on some round-the-world junket shooting handheld out of a backpack. I have no idea what my next job is, but I know I can configure my RED camera to adapt to most things I throw at it. Being able to edit, resize, reframe and grade 8K RAW all in real time is an absolute godsend for me, as it gives me so much extra spare time to be more creative. At the end of the day, the camera I choose needs to be a Swiss Army knife. But irrespective of how good my tools may be, content will always be king. But you need great tools to capture great content, and that's why I've chosen RED. Have a great day, everyone.
So James, question for you. We've talked about the power of RED, the 3 R's. I think that's really powerful. I think that's a pointed word.
Mhm.
But I think what's really important to realize is that there are other attributes of the red technology that have been very successful in the marketplace, and that's flexibility, the versatility, and the modularity. Aside from what we talked about today, can you give us your sense of what your customer feedback is? And we had a lot of customer feedback. I think our partnership is between B&H
Mhm.
and Red is very solid.
Mhm.
But as a manufacturer, how much of the three aspects that I just mentioned, how much
Mhm.
is that a solid feedback you get from your customer base in pretty much all the marketplaces where you have a presence?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. That flexibility, that availability, that essentially that ability to pick a camera or pick a module or pick a sensor that gives you the look, the feel, the deliverable you need. And then guess what? Tomorrow, I'm not a shooter, or maybe a lot of my shooters aren't consistently shooting the same stuff every day. So they might be doing a VFX shoot one day, on sticks, studio shoot the next, and then me running, gunning out of a backpack the third day. And I think that's really what we talk about with flexibility. It can be flexibility and modularity. It can be flexibility in your lens choices, right? We have a camera that does both full frame and super 35. It doesn't have to be just one or the other. And that's why the Monstro sensor is our flagship sensor. And you'll see it in not just our camera, you'll also see that in the Panavision DXL as well. I also think that with the flexibility of Redcode, it allows me to essentially go into that VFX shoot or go into that studio shoot and essentially crank it all the way to that favorite rockumentary, right? Crank it all the way to 11, right? And get the highest detail and the lowest compression. But really, even at the end of the day, we're still only at right around 260 megabytes per second. And if you compare that with some of the other cameras that maybe do an uncompressed RAW, we're doing 3 or 4 times their resolution, all at 16-bit RAW with a file size that might be half the size. So it really allows you the flexibility to tailor your production needs as well as what your final deliverable is. And one aspect that we haven't even really talked about, and you can hear it right now, I'm making my camera go clickety click. Now, if you're a still shooter one day or a motion shooter the next, you don't have to choose. That might allow you to essentially flexible wise, not have to bring 2 shooters on set and essentially be able to pull your stills for either the marketing team or the poster board or whatever else you need, all from the same camera system.
Yeah,
Well,
and the side handle, I was just going to say, and the side handle that James was just touching is such a great example of how you can tool modularity to fulfill the needs that you want to achieve. And we actually put our money where our mouth is. We make content within the company where I shoot stills as well as motion, edit campaigns, all within the company with our camera, and it's caused me to use just about every module we make, right? So on a long interview, I like the production module because I've got built-in audio. If I'm shooting stills, I love the side handle that James is using because I can mark frames and have a more traditional feel of the camera like I'm used to. And I can turn all of that around, strip it away, and throw it in a gimbal, which is another of my favorite configurations. And just that alone is unique to our camera.
Another question for you, I think that's really important to mention is you've touched on one of the R's, which is resolution.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it may be important to touch upon a concept that maybe not everyone is as familiar as we are. Is
Mm-hmm.
the concept of super sampling.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit
Mm-hmm.
why, the advantage of shooting a higher resolution, even if you're not finishing in the resolution
Yeah.
that you capture at.
Yeah, it's not a uncommon thing in the professional space, whether we're making beautiful images or we're taking stills or we're making cupcakes for that matter. Having a surplus of whatever your source files are to window down or maybe find the best of the best within there is always something that's going to give you the best results. Now, whether you are in the broadcast space and you remember that 2.7K broadcast camera that delivered in HD, or maybe perhaps you were shooting a larger film stock to do a final deliverable for theatrical production. Resolution has always been something, or maybe shooting a bigger canvas has always been something that has been in our core productions. I mean, if we think back to Ansel Adams, he used to go out and shoot big, thick,
Mhm.
rich negatives, which were
Yeah.
limited by the print resolutions at that time. So he didn't go out and shoot just the status quo. No, you shoot with the biggest canvas you can. Why? Because here we are in 2020. I've had an 8K camera for almost 4 years now, and really that allows me to have not have to essentially go out and reshoot all my content when someone comes back and says, you know what, we have a new screen, we have a new projection technology. I've essentially future-proofed my production. And it can be something as simple as I like widescreen and Clay likes full frame. And Johnny likes wants to finish for TikTok and pick a 9:16. I'm sorry, Johnny. I'm sorry you got the tail end of that joke. But
yeah, Johnny, you're the Instagram guy. That's you.
but I'm tired of seeing customers buy, beautiful cinematic cameras and then turn them sideways so they can get their, 9:16 or their letterbox orientation or their portrait orientation. And that's really one of the benefits of having extra resolution. We can do that with frame guides. We can stabilize and have extra wiggle room. And it could be as simple as something as maybe the boom operator's getting a little tired at the end of the day and it starts creeping into our shot. Really something that we see as a flexible option. And we lovingly like to call it the Fincher, where we're shooting 8K, maybe with our helium. We have our frame guide set for 6K, and really we know we're going to finish in 4. And so what that allows us to do is have the richest total image capture, but still having all of that flexibility in post. And we wouldn't be able to do it if it wasn't for the benefit of Redcode and having that workable file.
There are inherent values to super sampling, right? So the idea of taking a larger original image and then dumbing it down is going to help for your noise characteristics. It's going to do a lot of great things for your image as well. And in the same way that we see video games over the years, right? So when you have low poly or you have, larger pixels and larger polygons that slowly evolve into the video games we have today, where skin is rendered really smoothly with a bit of translucence. That's all due to the increase in resolution, right? So we're able to create a more realistic image with those details when we have more resolution, even when we express it in a smaller delivery.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Really awesome. I think that was a terrific presentation. I want to thank you guys, James, Clay, and Johnny. Until we can actually see each other again in person, stay safe, and hopefully we can get together again for more of these valuable, informational get-together. So thank you, Red. Thank you guys, for being with us.
Thank you.
And for the rest of the audience, I just want to say we have plenty of more content for you guys to review. You can actually go to our website or our social media channel to find how to contact us, how to get to our bank of on-demand videos where you can continue to learn and listen to people who are influential in the industry. So thank you again for everyone, and we'll see you next time.